Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the splintered shoes of someone whose job was equal parts public spectacle and private horror. You're not a knight, a monk, or even a medieval innkeeper. No, tonight you're a medieval dentist. You crouch over unwashed mouths, yank rotten teeth with iron tongs, and mop up blood with whatever's nearby, which, spoiler alert, is never sanitary. Your patients call you a miracle worker until you slip. Then you're the butcher of brews. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in a cramped corner of the town square, staring at a wooden crate that's doubling as your operating table. Around you, the market bustles with clanging bells, roasting meats, and the cheerful shrieks of children chasing geese. You're just trying to coax a molar out of a man who hasn't brushed his teeth since the last solar eclipse. There's no dental school. You didn't earn this role with a degree. You inherited it, or more likely, claimed it because you once yanked a splinter from a barmaid's toe and thought, how much worse could a tooth be? Spoiler, much worse. And yet, here you are. A barrel-chested butcher nods at you approvingly as you adjust your blood-stained apron. Even he thinks your job is nasty. That's not a great sign. Your first patient is already sweating. His beard is matted with soup, and his breath smells like a mix of sour milk and regret. He points to a swollen cheek and winces. "It feels like there's a demon chewing me bones." He groans. You nod sagely. This is your life now. Part healer, part therapist, part accidental exorcist. You don't tell him you've seen worse. You've smelled worse. The tools of your trade, forged not in some heavenly forge of hygienic wonder, but in the same blacksmith shop that makes horseshoes. Your favorite tooth puller is a twisted chunk of iron called a pelican, named after the bird because of its beak-like clamp. It's also great at crushing teeth instead of pulling them, which makes your job more exciting and your patients less willing to return. But they do return, eventually, because toothaches in the Middle Ages aren't mild inconveniences. They're slow, agonizing invitations to fever, infection, and eventually, death. Historians still argue whether commoners feared dentists more than they feared battle. Given the screaming, you're leaning toward yes. You wrap your fingers around the pelican. Its grip is slick with whatever unidentifiable goo soaked into the handle last week. You wedge it into the man's mouth, searching for the offending molar. The tooth wobbles. So does he. A woman nearby mutters a prayer and crosses herself. You give it a tug, crack, snap, squelch. The man howls like a wounded wolf. A small child drops their turnip in shock. You hold up the bloodied tooth like it's Excalibur. People clap. A few gag. This is your life now. You're the medieval dentist. And it sucks. But the worst part? This was the easy tooth. The market doesn't quiet for you. Not even when someone's molar hits the cobblestones like a tiny bloody stone of shame. You're not in a clinic. You don't have a door to close, a sign to flip to closed, or a patient list to politely ignore. No, your dental practice is a folding stool, a stained apron, and a place just far enough from the meat vendors that your screams don't interfere with sausage sales. Your office, if you're feeling generous, is wedged between the tanner's stall and a man loudly selling fermented fish. The air smells like boiling hide, sweat, and something you suspect was once a goose. Behind you, Flies gather on a blood-spotted cloth that used to be white, maybe long ago. You crouch, wave your next patient over, and grab a rag that was once someone's shirt sleeve. This one's a baker, and his teeth are as black as the underside of his oven. He sits on a wooden stool you've leveled with a rock. You flash him your nicest grimace, your version of a bedside manner. He doesn't look comforted. What are your sanitation practices, you ask? Well, technically, the cloth's been rinsed once, last harvest. You dunk your tools in a jug of vinegar every so often, but mostly, your cleaning method is don't let it crust too much. And yes, your workspace is public. Everyone watches. They treat you like a traveling puppet show, except the marionettes bleed, and the performance ends in dry heaving. Children press forward, fascinated and horrified. A butcher laughs and shouts, "Get the pliers, Doc." Here's the thing. Pain in the medieval world isn't private. It's a spectacle. A man crying into your cloak while you wrench bone from gum is something people gather for. You've even had a vendor offer to roast chestnuts next to your station for better audience comfort. You declined, regretfully. Historians still debate how much dentistry was performed in public squares versus backroom apothecaries. But in small towns, your turf, if people can't see it, they don't trust it. That goes for exorcisms, pig weigh-ins, and molar removals. You squint at the baker's mouth. It's worse than you feared. His gums are swollen, the tooth is rotted to the root, and something that may be a maggot waves hello from the back corner. You look away and pretend not to notice. This man needs bread. You don't want to ruin it for yourself. He asks what you'll use to get the tooth out. You hold up your trusty pelican, the same tool you used on a monk last week, a barmaid the week before, and an ox before that. It's versatile, and possibly cursed. You jam it under the tooth. He grips the stool. You whisper, "Try not to bite." You pull. There's a crunch like someone stepping on old parchment. He screams. The crowd leans in. You twist. The tooth finally comes free, but part of the root doesn't. Whoops. You fish around in his bleeding mouth with your finger, trying to pry out the splintered bit. It's no use. You slap some crushed garlic and wool into the hole, and mutter something vaguely Latin sounding. That's your magical healer routine. It fools no one, but it buys you time. As he stumbles away, dazed, you dab your forehead. A dog pees on your table leg. The baker left behind a molar, half a copper coin, and a faint smell of sourdough. This is your workplace, not a temple of healing, more like a sideshow of survival. Your fingers ache. Your shoulders crack every time you reach for another tool. And let's be honest, your tools are terrifying. Nothing in your kit would look out of place in a medieval dungeon. That's because most of them are repurposed torture devices, or at least they feel that way when you're using them on living, breathing people who flinch at the mere sight of your apron. You glance down at your collection. Laid out on a blood-stained scrap of canvas are your pride and joy. The dental pelican, which you already know and love/fear. Iron forceps that don't really fit any human mouth. And a little curved blade for gum scraping, which sounds delicate, but is roughly as gentle as shearing a sheep with a shovel. There's also the tooth key, a cruel little crank that you shove into a person's mouth, twist, and hope it yanks the tooth instead of dislocating their jaw. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you accidentally invent new ways to scream. The pelican is still your go-to, though. You file down the beak so it doesn't crush the tooth quite as often, but it still tends to pinch more gum than you'd like. Of course, you could blame the tools, but it's hard to get consistent quality when they're made by the same guy who forges farming scythes and occasionally forgets which item is supposed to go where. Historians still argue whether these tools were used with any real finesse, or if dental extractions were more like tug of war with extra blood. Based on your lived experience, it's definitely the latter. Technique matters, sure, but if someone's got a tooth rotted so badly it smells like death reheated, there's no elegant way to deal with that. You're not doing ballet here. You're doing medieval demolition and cleaning these tools. You wipe them on your sleeve, maybe on the apron. Sometimes you dip them in strong wine. You once tried fire, but the handle caught and nearly singed your eyebrows off. Now you mostly rely on the tried and true method of not thinking too hard about it. Your next patient is already fidgeting, a traveling merchant, judging by the coin purse he clutches like a nervous habit. His front tooth is blackened, possibly cracked. You mutter something about how the moon favors extraction today and reach for the forceps. The man flinches at the cold iron. You pat his shoulder, which might have once been reassuring if your hands didn't smell faintly of old clove oil and dried pus. You gently insert the forceps around the offending tooth and then yank, quick and hard. It doesn't come. You twist harder. Something pops. Something cracks. He shrieks, kicks, and slams his knee straight into your shin. You don't cry out. You've learned not to. You just hiss through your teeth and pretend the pain is part of the process. The tooth finally comes free, and with it, a bit of gum, something pale and stringy, and oh dear, possibly a small piece of jawbone. He's not in a state to notice. He's curled forward, weeping quietly, while the onlookers murmur approvingly at your strength. Strength in this job means knowing how hard you can pull before your patient passes out, or dies, or throws up on your shoes. Again, you wrap the tooth in a cloth and press it into his hand like a prize. He nods weakly. You send him off with a rough poultice made of garlic, crushed herbs, and whatever you've got that smells remotely antiseptic. He limps away. You clean your forceps with a corner of your sleeve and sigh. It's only midday, and the tooth key hasn't even come out yet. You've barely had time to wipe your hands before the next patient appears, clutching their jaw and muttering something about devils in the molars. A middle-aged woman this time, with streaks of gray in her braid and eyes that scream desperation, masked as bravery. She sits without being asked, lowers her head, and whispers, "They say the pain's from a curse." Ah yes, the demons. You've dealt with these before. In the medieval world, toothache don't just mean rot, they mean retribution. From God, from spirits, from whatever you might have done wrong. 3 harvests ago, when you skipped mass to drink barley ale in the woods. Pain is punishment, plain and simple. And in this case, they think it's spiritual warfare happening right behind the molars. You nod solemnly, like someone who understands the dark arts. In reality, you understand swelling, abscesses, and the smell of infection that radiates off a bad tooth like smoke from a fire. But appearances matter. You can't just be a tooth yanker. You've got to be part exorcist, part folk healer, part showman. You mumble something about bad humors and moon cycles, and give her a sprig of dried lavender to hold. She clutches it like it's holy. Now here's the fun part. This isn't just a dental procedure, it's a spiritual battle. A small boy watches you from behind a basket of turnips, whispering to his sister that you're about to drive out the demon with the iron bird. You're not correcting him. Let the rumors fly. Historians still debate how deeply beliefs in toothworms and demonic possession influenced medieval dental practice. Some argue that barbers and healers exploited superstition for business. Others believe people genuinely thought the ache was alive, moving inside the gums, eating through the soul. You've heard them all: the worm story, the sin theory, even one old man who swore it was the ghost of his ex-wife gnawing on his nerves. You ask the woman to open her mouth. What greets you is a molar swollen with abscess. The skin around it is purple, hot, and glossy. There's a soft crackle when you press, and she nearly falls off the stool. Definitely infected, possibly septic, potentially fatal. You smile gently and say, "We'll get the spirit out." You grab your sharpest scalpel, say a few nonsensical Latin phrases for effect, and slice a tiny pocket along the gum. Pus explodes like sour custard. Someone in the audience retches. You've long stopped reacting. She screams, then sighs. Relief pours out of her like the fluid on your apron. You pack the wound with garlic paste and honey, two things you can actually trust in this era. The honey's been stolen from a monastery beehive. The garlic, grown by your aunt. Both kill infection better than most things in your kit. Still, there's a good chance this tooth will kill her anyway. Although, if not now, then slowly, quietly. Fever in the night, confusion, a slip into death, while her family blames a demon. You pause a moment, inhale the mix of honey, rot, and regret. She presses a copper coin into your palm, blesses you, and walks away. You wonder if the lavender helped more than anything you did. Behind you, someone whispers, "He cured her." You don't correct them. You just wait for the next curse to walk your way. Your back is sore, your fingers are sticky, and now comes your least favorite part of the job, lying about pain relief. A boy approaches, no more than 16, already hunched from years of hauling water, or worse. He's got a chipped incisor and a face like someone who's tried chewing rocks. He asks, nervously, "You've got something for the hurt, right?" You nod. Of course, you've got something. You reach into your pouch and pull out a small flask of what passes for ale. If ale means sour, low-proof swamp juice, fermented in a pigskin bladder. You pour a splash into a cracked cup and hand it over. He hesitates. "I heard you had poppy," he whispers. You wince. You used to have poppy. A monk smuggled you a few dried pods once, but those ran out months ago, and your supplier now claims the saints forbade it. So it's back to old standbys: booze, prayer, and distraction. "Drink," you say, gently. He downs it, coughs, and nearly throws it back up. That's step one. Step two, a strip of leather for biting. You offer him the handle of your belt, chewed soft from years of service. He clamps down like it's his last meal. Then comes the work. You remember that old rhyme: no sleep for the sick, no peace for the tooth, but drink and bleed, and pray for truth. That's your entire anesthetic philosophy. Historians still argue over how widespread pain control truly was in medieval dental work. Some claim herbs like henbane, mandrake, and opium were more common than we think, used by monks and mystics with deep herb lore. Others argue that for the average villager, pain was the price of survival. You're inclined to agree with the pain crowd. Sometimes, if you're lucky, a patient faints from terror before the tool goes in. Most of the time, they scream, they twitch, and you do your best not to chip a good tooth on the way out. This boy doesn't scream, though. He moans, deep and low, like an animal trying not to be heard by predators. You respect that, but the moment you twist the incisor free, He loses consciousness entirely. You catch him before he falls. That counts as good service. You wipe the tooth on your apron and place it beside your other trophies. A merchant once offered to pay you for your tooth collection, said he made charms out of them to ward off evil dreams. You declined, barely. You splash some water on the boy's face. He comes to slowly, eyes glassy, lips trembling. You smile, pat his cheek, and give him a bit of salted bread. Salt is your cure-all, stops bleeding, distracts the tongue, makes people think you're doing something smart. The boy nods. It's gone. You nod back. It's gone. You don't say what is gone. The pain? The tooth? The memory of dignity? Possibly all of the above. A woman watching mutters, "He never even cried." You wink at her. Must have been the ale. It wasn't. It was youth, desperation, and teeth that had too much story for someone that age. The boy limps away, clutching his jaw. You pocket the copper coin he dropped and reach for the next cup of swamp ale, this time for yourself. A commotion brews at the edge of the square. You hear it before you see it. Sharp heels on cobblestones, the unmistakable rustle of too many silk layers, and that high-pitched nasal tone only the wealthy can manage when things aren't exactly to their liking. You sigh. The nobility has arrived, and they're worse than the peasants. Always. You stand, straighten your tunic, and wipe your hands on your already filthy apron. No amount of cleaning will make you look respectable, but nobles don't care about clean. They care about being treated like they're made of gold leaf and divine breath. The woman approaching you wears a burgundy gown embroidered with what might be actual pearls. Her mouth is drawn into a tight line, and her gloved hand clutches a lace-trimmed handkerchief, because heaven forbid she breathe the same air as the peasants whose teeth you've just yanked. "This is the dentist?" she whispers, as though the word itself might stain her tongue. Behind her lumbers a man who looks less like a husband and more like a walking wallet. He grimaces, revealing a smile lined with tiny jewel-encrusted fillings, each one a rotten little status symbol. This is what they call dental fashion. You call it dental disaster. Historians still argue whether gold fillings in the Middle Ages were meant to restore function or simply flaunt wealth. In your experience, it's 100% flaunting, especially when they start demanding replacement teeth made from ivory, bone, or even animal teeth. One nobleman once asked for a bear tooth to look more intimidating at court. It fell out mid-banquet. This particular noble is here for a cleaning, as if that's a thing you actually offer. You nod gravely. "Of course, my lady. Shall we begin?" She sits, sort of, more like perches, as if your stool might infect her lineage. You peer into her mouth and instantly regret it. Under all that silk and perfume, she has the breath of an old boot full of anchovies. Her gums are red and receding, and a black spot is forming under a gold molar, decay trapped beneath the jewelry. You gently tap the tooth. She flinches and slaps your hand. "I said clean it, not bruise it." You resist the urge to bite your own tongue. You take out your smallest chisel, normally used for scraping plaque, which, by the way, is the hardened remnants of years-old meat and sweetened wine stuck between the teeth like barnacles. You begin scraping, carefully, gently. Every flake that falls loose is met with a whimper, as though you're ripping out her soul through her gums. She fans herself between sobs. Behind her, the husband hovers. "Can you polish it?" he asks. "With what, you think?" "Do you imagine I have mint paste And a motorized buffer hidden under this stool? You smile politely. Certainly. For an extra coin. He nods and tosses a silver into your hand. You reach for your rag, the least bloodied corner, and dip it in rosemary water. It's the closest thing to a rinse you can offer. You buff the tooth until it shines a little. Not much, just enough to reflect her own disdainful expression. There, you say. Fit for court. She pouts, touches the tooth delicately, then rises like a queen ascending into heaven. She sniffs. Passable. You don't punch anyone. You simply nod and pocket the coin. The truth is, treating nobles sucks. They complain more. They bleed more. They bring expectations that no one working in a public square with horseflies and screaming chickens could ever meet. And when something goes wrong, when a tooth cracks or a nerve flares, they make noise. Worse, they remember. A peasant forgets the pain. A noble sends a letter to the bishop, but the coin, that part's nice. You wipe your tools again, resisting the urge to throw them in the nearest well, and just like that, the silk storm passes, and you're left with the real people. Again, bloody mouths, broken teeth, and honest screams. You breathe easier, until you hear the word abscess again. By late afternoon, the sun is lower, the flies are braver, and your cloak smells like a compost heap. Married a slaughterhouse. It's warm, damp, and ripe, like a fermented stew of garlic poultices, dried spit, and week-old blood. This scent, this aura, is your calling card now. Children know you're nearby, smell alone. Dogs follow you, hopefully, confused by the meat-like tang clinging to your sleeves. Even the town rats give you space. You sit for a moment, knees cracking as you drop onto your stool. You reach into your pouch and pull out your one indulgence, a strip of salted apple. It's wrinkled, leathery, and tastes like an old boot dipped in vinegar. But it's yours, a small pleasure in a day that's been nothing but pain. You chew slowly, staring at the blood flecks under your nails. You'll never scrub those clean, not with water, not with ash, not even with the lime paste the washerwomen claim takes stains off bones. Your next patient approaches hesitantly. He's wearing a heavy wool tunic, and his face is sallow. A farmer, maybe, or a cooper. The moment he opens his mouth, you know what this is. Pus. So much pus. His jaw is swollen like he's storing apples for winter, and the smell hits you before the wind does. You try not to wince. You fail. I've tried herbs, he mumbles. Even leeches. Of course he has. Historians still debate whether medieval leeching was more superstition than science. But here's what you know. People slap leeches on everything from sore throats to infected fingernails. A swollen gum, prime territory. But all it really does is drain blood and leave you with a tiny sucker-shaped bruise. Doesn't help when your mouth is full of rotting sludge. You gently tap the side of his jaw. He flinches. You nod. Yep, that's an abscess, and you're about to lance it. Now in an ideal world, say one that exists in the future, you'd have gloves, a sterile scalpel, an operating room. Here, you've got a small curved blade, rinsed in old wine, and a scrap of linen that's been doubling as your sweat rag. You tell him to bite down on a stick. He doesn't ask questions. Smart man. You make a small incision. At first, nothing. Then a squelch, followed by a spray of yellow-green pus. It hits your arm, your apron, your cheek. You don't flinch. You've stopped reacting. It's part of the uniform now. The man groans in relief, like a demon's been let out of his skull. You squeeze the wound gently, drawing out the rest. The smell is eye-watering. A woman nearby retches into a basket of radishes. You silently salute her. That's a normal response. Once the abscess is drained, you stuff the cavity with a mix of garlic, sage, and a dusting of salt, your holy trinity. If the man's lucky, he'll recover. If not, he dies in 3 days with a fever and visions of angels. But at least he'll die with a little less pressure in his face. He thanks you, actually thanks you, presses a coin into your hand, and limps off, mouth still dripping. You wipe your blade on your apron, toss the pus-soaked linen into the gutter, and reach for a fresh one. If fresh means less than 3 days old, you lean back, wipe your brow, and take another bite of salted apple. Still warm, still smells, still sucks. You barely have time to rewrap your knife before a shadow crosses your stall. Not the hunched figure of another peasant, not the puffed up silhouette of a noble. This one wears a robe, a thick brown one, cinched at the waist with rope. And suddenly, you feel the same uneasy chill you get when someone mentions eternal judgment right before a tooth extraction. The church has arrived, specifically a friar, rosary clinking at his belt, expression calm, but eyes watchful. You offer a polite nod, wiping your hands on your apron as though that'll fool anyone. Brother, he greets you. Father, you say. Incorrect title. You're too tired to care. He kneels beside your tools, inspecting your forceps like they might whisper heresy. You get nervous, not because you fear judgment, but because it's hard to explain why one of your pliers has a piece of tooth still stuck in the hinge. I've heard rumors, the friar murmurs, of healers tampering with the divine order. Here we go. You stand up straight, puffing your chest a little. You've dealt with this before. The accusation, the suspicion, the idea that pain is holy, that suffering is a message from God, and you, yanking out wrought with iron, might be interfering. Sometimes, you say softly, I ease suffering, that's all. He narrows his eyes. The truth is, the church has a complicated relationship with medicine in general, and dentistry in particular. Historians still argue whether clergy disapproved of dental work because it involved blood, or because it threatened the authority of saints and relics. You've heard both. In some towns, monks perform dental work themselves. In others, you're warned to stop playing God every time you treat a festering gum. This friar, you're not sure where he lands. I've heard, he says, that you use charms. You blink. I use garlic. He pauses and chants, mostly grunts, a long silence, then a ghost of a smile. To your surprise, he rolls up his sleeve. Can you look? He says, pointing to his jaw. You don't move at first. Is this a trick? But no, his face is flushed, and when he opens his mouth, you spot it instantly. A swollen molar, deep at the back, inflamed, tender, probably hasn't been touched in years. You nod. It'll hurt. He shrugs. So does sin. Fair enough. You hand him a cloth to bite, pour a splash of weak wine onto your pelican, and say a quick prayer for both of you. As you extract the tooth, he barely makes a sound, just a soft grunt, one tear sliding down his cheek. When it's out, you wrap it in linen and hand it to him like a holy relic. He doesn't thank you, but he bows, and that says more. He walks away quietly, and you take a long breath, because while the peasants scream and the nobles sneer, the church watches, and sometimes that's worse. Late afternoon, light slants across the square, warm and golden, painting everything in a kind of false gentleness. But you've seen enough molars today to know nothing is gentle in this job. especially not what's coming next. A boy, maybe 10, approaches your stall, not for a toothache, not even for his own teeth. He's holding something wrapped in cloth, careful, almost reverent. He places it on your table with both hands. "My uncle's," he says softly. You unwrap the bundle and find dentures, sort of. A crude half circle of human teeth jammed into what looks like boiled bone or wood. Bits of thread still clinging where gums once were. They smell like mold, beeswax, and the faint, unmistakable trace of grave dirt. You stare at them, then glance back at the boy. "He passed," he says, "but he wanted them fixed for the funeral." You nod slowly. Medieval dentures are a strange thing, half miracle, half nightmare. Historians still argue about their commonality. Some insist only the rich had them. Others say battlefield scavengers sold teeth to anyone with coin. You know the truth is weirder. The best teeth come from corpses. War dead, mostly. Fresh ones, dragged off muddy fields, mouths pried open, useful bits yanked out and cleaned with wine. You've bought a few yourself, never directly from the source, of course. But you know a bone boy in the next village who makes deliveries when the fighting's been good. These teeth, a mixed bag, some yellowed and cracked, others oddly white, almost too white, probably taken from someone younger, someone who didn't agree to the donation. You grab your tools and set to work, scraping off debris, filing edges, readying the thread. You melt a bit of wax to reseal the gums and press each tooth in like a grotesque little puzzle. It's slow, delicate work. Behind you, a few people murmur. "Are those real?" You don't answer. Because yes, they're real, and no one wants to hear that at dinner time. There's no regulation for dental materials in this century. No ethics board, no laws. If it fits, if it holds, if it makes someone look more alive in their coffin, you do it. Whether the teeth came from a battlefield or a burial pit, well, that's between you and your candlelight. The dentures are finished now. Crude, but functional. You press them gently into a mold to harden. The boy watches, eyes wide. He whispers, "Thank you." Sane. You wrap them again and hand them over. He runs off before you can charge him. You don't stop him. Sometimes the silence is payment enough. Sometimes it's just easier not to explain, because fixing the dead man's smile with someone else's teeth, that's not dental work. That's medieval magic. You stretch your back. Something in your spine pops with the clarity of a snapped twig. It's been hours, and your hands feel like they've been carved from wood, stiff, splintered, and stained the color of old iron. Across the square, another commotion. You don't need to look to know what it is. The butchers are heckling the barbers again. You sigh. Here we go. Another turf war. See, in this glorious age of medicine, you're not alone in your line of work. Oh no, you've got competition from everyone. Barbers, for one, they don't just trim hair. They lance boils, drain infections, and annoyingly pull teeth. Some even wave around bits of paper claiming they were trained by monks. They travel with red and white poles like flags of questionable competence. Then there are butchers, surprisingly good with blades. A few offer extractions after they finish gutting pigs. They call it meat work for the living. You tried not to laugh the first time you heard it, failed. And let's not forget monks. They claim spiritual healing. Sometimes they'll whisper a psalm, while pressing hot iron against your gums and call it divine cleansing. You once treated someone for divine cleansing burns, and you're stuck in the middle. Not religious enough for the church, not bloody enough for the butchers, not clean-shaven enough for the barbers. Historians still argue which group owned medieval dental care. The truth, it was a chaotic free-for-all. Whoever could yank a tooth without causing immediate death called themselves a dentist. A barber struts over now, arms crossed, eyes scanning your tools. He's younger than you, and his sleeves are suspiciously clean. Still using that pelican, old man? He sneers. You don't answer. Just flick a bit of dried pus from your sleeve. I use the new lever hook, he continues. Straight from Milan. Much cleaner. You nod. How's your infection rate? He hesitates. Just for a second. You smile. Barbers may have flashy gear and smooth hands, but they don't know mouths the way you do. You can tell a rotten molar by the color of someone's spit. You can smell an abscess from 3 paces. You've yanked teeth while holding down a screaming man with your knee. He walks off eventually, muttering something about new methods. You don't care. You've seen a butcher drop a tooth into a bucket of pig's blood and tell the patient it was sacred brine. You've seen monks crush dried sage into beer and call it a cure for jaw demon. You've seen a barber dance around a patient while chanting to Saint Apollonia, patron of toothaches, and still fail to remove the right tooth. The truth, everyone's bluffing. You just bluff with more experience. You glance down at your tools. Some are chipped, one is rusting, but they're yours, and they've pulled more teeth than anyone else in this village. A boy runs past, yelling, "The tooth man's better than the beard man." You chuckle. Victory comes in strange shapes these days. A thin drizzle begins to mist the square, softening the stink of dried blood and damp bread. You look up, overcast. Perfect weather for melancholic dentistry. You duck under a piece of linen stretched overhead and light a small wax taper. The breeze tries to snuff it out, but you shield it with your palm. You need the light. Your next case isn't a simple yank or a bloodletting. It's a diagnosis. The woman sitting before you is pale, skin tight around her mouth, lips dry and cracked. She opens slowly. No scream, no panic, just confusion. "My teeth feel heavy," she says. "They itch. My bones itch." "That's a new one." You peer into her mouth, gums pale and receding. A strange powdery film on her tongue. You gently prod a molar, and it wobbles, barely hanging on. You lean back, squint, and try not to look alarmed. "Too much wind in the body," you murmur. That's the safest thing to say when you don't know what's going on. She nods solemnly. You reach for your ragged copy of an old herbal, flipping past pages water-damaged and worm-eaten. A crude drawing of a jawbone sits beside a recipe involving goat bile, crushed walnuts, and the position of the moon. According to humorism, the popular medical theory of the day, all health depends on balancing 4 fluids: blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. Too much of one? Madness. Too little of another? Death. Or a loose incisor, apparently. You're not a scholar, but you know this much. This woman's got scurvy. Not that anyone in your century knows what scurvy is. Historians still argue how much understanding of vitamin deficiency even existed in the medieval period. You just know this type of gum looks like it wants to escape the skull. You hand her a mash of parsley, salt, and dried orange peel. smuggled from a spice merchant who thinks it's rat poison. You tell her to chew it slowly each morning. She nods like you've shared a sacred rite. For flair, you recite a line from a medical charm you half remember from a tavern. Gum to bone, stay thy Rome, lest rot, send thee to kingdom come. She crosses herself and presses a sprig of dried rosemary into your hand. Payment, or maybe protection. You sigh. You miss working with problems you can pull. This is the part of dentistry no one respects, when nothing bleeds, but everything decays. The slow slide of rot beneath the surface, the strange, itchy weight of something wrong inside the body, with no screaming to mark its arrival. And then there are the dreams. She tells you hers, teeth crumbling into sand, jaws falling open, shadows spilling from her tongue. Dreams like this, common. Some think they're warnings from saints, others say it means a curse. You just know they usually come before someone dies. You don't say that out loud. Instead, you pack her mouth with crushed sage and beeswax, murmur something soothing, and send her home. She thanks you like she believes it worked. You hope she's right. The drizzle picks up. The wax taper dies. You pull your cloak tight. Still another hour of daylight left. Plenty of time for more mouths, more mysteries, and more guesses dressed as cures. A man stumbles toward you, hunched and hobbling, one hand pressed firmly against his face. Blood leaks between his fingers. You don't ask what's wrong. There's only ever one reason someone walks like that. He's desperate. I can't take it, he mumbles. I'll die. I swear it, if you don't fix this. His eyes are wild. You recognize the look. People get it when the pain has hollowed out their sleep, their temper, their sense of reality. The aching has become part of them. And when the pain is you, you'll promise anything to be rid of it. You offer him the stool. He hesitates. Will it hurt? You don't lie. Yes. He nods anyway and sits. That's the rhythm of your job. They hate you until they need you. Then they'd let you stab them with a pitchfork if it meant a moment of silence in their skull. You ask how long it's been. He doesn't answer with days. He says, since my cousin's funeral. That could mean a week or a year. You tilt his head back and take a look. Lower right molar, inflamed, discolored. Pus at the gum line. Every breath he exhales smells like wet iron and decay. You mutter, this one's not coming out clean. He doesn't care. People don't trust you, not really, but they believe you can do something. Pull, cut, yank, mumble a chant over a bloody rag, and tell them it'll be better by morning. You're the last stop, before fever, before rot enters the bloodstream, and sleep becomes permanent. Historians still debate whether medieval patients viewed tooth pullers as skilled craftsmen or brutal necessity. Judging by the bruises on your forearms, from flailing patients, probably both. You reach for the pelican again. It's duller than it should be, but you know how to angle it just right. You wedge it deep, feel the tooth give slightly, and brace yourself. He groans, loud. Someone nearby mutters that you're torturing the man. You ignore it. This is your part of town, your square, your domain, and these are your consequences. You twist. The tooth resists. You press harder. There's a soft crunch, part enamel, part gum, and then a pop as the root tears free. Blood floods his mouth. He sputters. You press a wad of wool and vinegar into the hole and wait. He sits, eyes wide, blood down his chin, and then, like so many before him, he starts to cry, not from pain, from relief. He whispers, "I thought I was going mad." You nod. You were. And now he's not. He leaves unsteady, but lighter. You wipe your hands on your apron. Again. The blood barely shows anymore. Around you, the square watches. Most look away when you meet their gaze. But when they need you, they'll be back. They always come back. Because even if they don't trust you, even if they spit at your feet or mutter prayers behind your back, you're the only one who knows how to make the pain stop, even if it means breaking them first. You're just starting to clean your blade, more out of habit than hope, when a man you've never seen before steps into your stall like he owns the place. He's tall, wrapped in layers of mismatched wool, and carries a sack over one shoulder. His eyes glitter with mischief. A traveling tinkerer, maybe, but there's something about the way he surveys your tools that makes your stomach tighten. "You the tooth man?" he asks, voice too loud for comfort. You nod. "I pull too," he says casually. "But I do it cleaner, faster, no screaming." You suppress a groan. "Not this again." The frauds, the charlatans, the traveling healers who blow into town, whisper promises, charge double, and vanish before the infection sets in. They call themselves miracle workers and leave you to mop up the pus. "I use this," he says, pulling a device from his bag, a long stick with a screw mechanism at the end, imported from Florence. Gets the whole root every time. No breakage. You lean closer. It's a glorified corkscrew. The crowd begins to gather. A few villagers whisper. They love drama, especially when someone claims to be better than you. Historians still debate whether these traveling tooth pullers were dangerous frauds or primitive innovators, but you know what they are. Showmen. They wear bright cloaks. They speak in rhymes. They promise that pain is optional, and they leave behind the wreckage for you to clean. The man grins, shows off a jar of teeth. "See? All full pulls, no splits." You glance at one. The roots are too clean, too polished, probably filed down afterward. The jar smells like vinegar and deceit. "Wanna watch me work?" he offers, raising his voice. The crowd murmurs. This is what they want. A duel of healers. You could walk away, but you don't. A volunteer steps forward. An older woman, eyes rheumy, breath shaky. "Hurts when I chew," she says. You can see it, the molar barely holding on. The fraud grins and inserts his device. You watch his hands. Too fast, no stabilization. The tooth wobbles, then crack, breaks at the gum line. The woman gasps, blood spills. He tries to recover, muttering that her energy was misaligned. She doesn't believe it, neither does anyone watching. He fumbles, then backs away. You step forward without a word. You grab your own tools. No flourish, no fanfare, just a hand under her jaw, a nod of assurance, a slow, steady turn. The broken root slides out like a splinter from damp wood. She exhales. Her hand finds yours. The crowd erupts in quiet applause, not loud, just enough. The fraud says nothing, just slips his device back into the sack and vanishes into the dusk, cloak fluttering like an embarrassed curtain. You don't gloat, you just wipe your tool, because in this line of work, the loudest ones rarely stay long, and the ones who fix what they break, they never leave. Dusk has crept in, slow and heavy, like a velvet curtain pulling across the sky. The last of the lanterns are being lit, and a few villagers begin packing up their stalls. You, however, are not done. You never really are. The last patient today is a familiar one. A man named Hal, who's had the worst dental luck of anyone in 3 counties. You've seen more of his mouth than his own wife. Probably has. He approaches with the slow shuffle of someone who's been here too many times and knows what's coming. Same one, he mutters, tapping his cheek. Other side this time. You nod. Of course it is. You've lost count of how many teeth Hal has left. 5, maybe 6, if you include the one he swears is just loose for breathing. He sits without being asked, and you hand him a cloth to bite. He doesn't bother, just closes his eyes and waits. You slide a hand under his jaw, and sure enough, the tooth is swaying in its socket like a rotted post in swampy earth. The gums around it are purple and tender. You don't even need to use the pelican. This one will come free with a twist and a tug, but something nags at you. His breath is short, his skin is pale, clammy. You ask how long it's been like this. A few days, he says. Can't eat, can't sleep. You nod again. You already know what this is. Infection, not just in the mouth. It's moved deeper. You can smell it under his skin. Sour, fevered. His eyes are rimmed with red, and there's a slight tremble in his fingers, like his body's holding on to itself by willpower alone. He doesn't even flinch. You pack the wound, offer him a drink. He refuses, and then he says it. Think I'll just lie down after this. Not at home, not on a clean bed, just down. You know what that means. Historians still debate how often minor dental infections turned deadly in the Middle Ages. But you don't need debate. You've seen it, more times than you care to count. A simple tooth gone bad, a fever that won't leave, a man like Hal who keeps coming back until one day he doesn't. He places a single coin on your table. Won't be needing more after this. You don't argue. You nod. He nods back and walks into the dark. You sit there for a moment, staring at the blood-specked cloth in your hand. This is the part no one sees. The cost. They think your worst moments are when someone screams or when a noble slaps you for making them bleed. But this is what stays with you. The quiet ones. The ones you couldn't save because medicine isn't magic and prayers don't disinfect wounds. You wrap the tools. You douse the lantern. The square is nearly empty. A soft wind rolls through, brushing against your stained apron like a farewell. You exhale and wait for the final mouth of the day. You're down to your last candle stub and one last patient. But of course, fate has a sense of humor. The man who stumbles into your stall isn't groaning. He isn't moaning. He's shivering, covered in a cloak too thin for the evening chill, face slick with sweat, skin pale beneath a dusting of soot and grime. His hands tremble, not from fear, but fever. I've got a toothache, he croaks. You already know. This isn't just a toothache. You lean in. His eyes are glassy. His breath is sharp with sickness, and under the scent of his sweat, you catch it. The unmistakable sour, rotting sweetness of something far worse than decay. Plague. Your stomach turns. Plague patients don't always announce themselves. Sometimes it starts with a boil. Sometimes it's vomiting or the blackened fingertips. And sometimes it's a jaw so swollen, the pressure pushes teeth loose before death even arrives. You step back, subtly. He opens his mouth. Inside, a molar is half out of the gum. You see streaks of black running through the soft tissue. His tongue is coated in a film the color of old milk. He coughs once, then twice. Hard. You flinch. The candle flickers. This is it. This is the moment all tooth pullers dread. You've survived this long avoiding it. dodging rumors, refusing to treat the truly infected. But sometimes they find you. Historians still argue whether medieval dentists knowingly treated plague victims. Some say healers ran, others say they stayed out of duty or desperation. But most were like you, too poor to flee, too close to risk refusing. You reach for your gloves. You don't have gloves. You reach for a thicker rag, wrap it around your hands, and pray. The man is swaying. You slide a hand under his chin and steady him. He tries to smile, teeth wobbling like loose pebbles in a stream. "I just need it out," he whispers. You nod. Even if this is the end, for him or for you, this is still your job. You grip the pelican with fabric-wrapped fingers, angle it carefully. No theatrics this time. No confident snap, just precision. A twist, a pull. The tooth slides free. It's rotten all the way to the root, black and mushy. You don't show him. He exhales like someone escaping a curse, and then collapses forward. You catch him. He's light, soaked through. His breath on your cheek is shallow and fast. You signal to a nearby boy, "Get help." The sisters. Now. The boy runs. You lay the man down gently beside your stall. You give him water. You tuck a cloth under his head. You whisper that he's going to be all right, even though you both know that's probably not true. Because the plague doesn't care that you pulled the tooth. It doesn't care that your fingers are bleeding, or that you haven't slept in 2 days. It doesn't care. You sit beside him until the sisters arrive, their veils drawn low, their hands full of herbs and caution. One of them asks if you touched him. You say nothing, just return to your stool. The man is carried away. You stay in the dark, listening to the square, listening to yourself, wondering if your throat feels tight, or if that's just fear. The square is empty now, just the creak of wagons in the distance, the flap of cloth in the breeze, and the faint echo of voices long gone. Your tools are wrapped. The blood is drying beneath your fingernails. The candle flickers once and dies. You sit for a moment longer, not because there's work left to do, but because your hands haven't stopped shaking. The night presses close now, gentle, not cruel, like a blanket wrapped around a weary body. Above you, clouds drift past the moon like silent guardians. The air has that earthy chill of old stone and damp straw. Somewhere, far off, a dog barks. Once, you've survived another day. You've faced pus, pain, frauds, friars, nobles, curses, and one man with plague. You've held teeth like tiny bones of memory, watched blood paint your apron, and stared into mouths that told stories no words ever could. And now, finally, there's stillness. The wind brushes your face like a mother wiping her child's brow. You let it stay. You let it all fall quiet. Tomorrow, more mouths will find you, more pain, more stories. But for now, you rest, you breathe, and as the night settles in, you close your eyes and let sleep take you, not with fear, not with regret, but with the simple peace of knowing that, despite it all, you pulled every tooth that asked.